Chairperson Raby.
Good morning. I would like to call this meeting of the Citizen Advisory Board to order. I am Katanya Raby and am the chairperson of the CAB. Secretary Greenlee, would you please call the roll?
For Robert Castaneda is absent. Peter Henderson.
Here.
Robert Johnson is expected but is not here yet. Ryan McCray.
Here.
Caroline Pavlicek. Here. Tracy Powell.
Here.
Chairperson Raby.
Here.
Sonia Del Rio.
Here. No, that's
Okay.
fine.
Kirby Scott Vanderweel. Emmanuel Garcia.
Here.
Student member. Ryan Parnell. Ryan Parnell indicated that he would be absent. He is a non-voting student member. And Aiden Keith,
Here.
another student member. Chairperson Raby.
Okay. We have another member, Danielle Stanley, who has requested that she be allowed to participate remotely due to a work conflict. Upon our review of the Open Meetings Act, we believe that her situation for remote access is applicable and warrants that we vote whether or not to admit her as a board. May I have a motion to admit CAB member Danielle Stanley remotely?
So moved.
Actually, Chair, I guess we can move. Can we move and second the vote? She has not actually logged on to Zoom.
Oh, she hasn't?
No.
Okay.
So I'm not.
So should we wait for her? Okay, so we'll revisit that. So now we'll open it up for public comment. Are there any requests for public comment?
Chairperson Raby, there are no requests for public comments.
Okay, thank you. For the minutes from the CAB board held on August 29th, 2023 were distributed to members of the CAB prior to this meeting for review. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Recording in progress.
We have a motion. Peter?
Peter Henderson.
Yeah. Okay, any seconds?
Second.
It's been moved by Peter Henderson and seconded by Tracy Powell that the minutes of the Citizens Advisory Board meeting of August 29th, 2023 be approved as submitted. We'll take a roll call vote. Sonia Del Rio.
Aye.
Peter Henderson.
Aye.
Chairperson Raby.
Aye.
Ryan McCray.
Aye.
Caroline Pavlicek.
Aye. Aye.
Tracy Powell.
Aye.
Chairperson Raby, the vote to approve the minutes carries.
Great. So item number 4, Citizen Advisory Board 2024 meeting dates. We've all received a proposed schedule for the meeting dates on 2024 for the CAB. May I have a motion to adopt the calendar of meeting dates for 2024 for the Citizen Advisory Board?
Move.
Peter Henderson. Second.
Second.
It's been moved by Peter Henderson and seconded by Caroline Pavlicek that the proposed meeting calendar for 2024 for the Citizens Advisory Board be adopted. We'll take a roll call vote. Tracy Powell.
Yes.
Caroline Pavlicek.
Yes.
Brian McCray.
Yes.
Chairperson Raby.
Yes.
Peter Henderson.
Yes.
Sonia Del Rio.
Yes.
The vote to adopt the calendar for 2024 passes.
All right. Item 5, CTA staff presentations. We have 3 presentations that will be made before the CAB. Our first is entitled Innovation Studio, and our VP of Innovation, Molly Hoppy, along with members of her team, will present. Morning.
Hi, how are you?
Right.
Morning.
Okay. Just making sure I can. Chairperson Raby, excuse me, Molly Pop.
Yeah.
Just for 1 second. I've been advised that Danielle Stanley has joined us on Zoom.
Okay. So can we move forward with the motion to approve her joining us via Zoom?
So moved.
Carolyn, and seconded by Peter.
It's been moved by Caroline Pavlicek and seconded by Peter Henderson that Danielle Stanley be permitted to join the Citizens Advisory Board meeting for this morning remotely via Zoom. We'll take a roll call vote. Sonia Del Rio.
Aye.
Peter Henderson.
Aye.
Tanya Raby,
Aye.
Brian McCray,
Yes.
Caroline Pavlik,
Aye.
Tracy Powell.
Yes.
The vote carries, and with that vote, we did have a quorum, but now we really do have a quorum with 7 out of 10 members present.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Molly Poppy. I am the Chief Innovation Officer for CTA, and I'm joined today by Emily Drexler. Emily is the Senior Manager for Strategy and Market Insights in the innovation team, and Paul Black is a Project Manager for Innovation. And we are here today to talk about Innovation Studio. So a couple quick background on Innovation Studio and what we are hoping to achieve with this particular program. So the Innovation Department is really tasked with incorporating cutting edge technology, new process improvements across CTA to enhance the customer and rider experience and also increase operational efficiency. If any of you are familiar, the process for going through procurement at any government agency, not just CTA, this is true across all government agencies, it is a very long and very laborious process. There's reasons for that, but oftentimes what can happen is it limits your ability to bring on new technologies or new processes or even test things out. You're oftentimes required through a procurement process that can take 12 months, 18 months, or even more. You're oftentimes required to be very specific about what you are trying to procure. So you can't just say, we have this problem and we'd like to see what the market, what the industry can tell us to solve. You oftentimes have to say, I need widget A, and widget A has to look exactly like this. Widget A cannot look any different than what I am telling you it needs to look like. And as you can imagine, if you start that in 2022, but you're not going to procure the thing until 2024, there's probably a difference in what the market is telling you is available. And there's probably a difference in widget A was cutting edge in 2022, may no longer be cutting edge in 2024. So what we're looking to do through Innovation Studio is really allow us to be more agile and quickly develop prototypes and pilot different tools so that when we are going out for a procurement, we have a good sense of one, what is the tool that we're looking for? We've tried it on the system. We have a good understanding of it. And we can also make sure that we're continuing to look at what's happening in the market, continue to try that out. So we can try to stay at the forefront of technology, at the forefront of process improvements, and the forefront of really what our customers and our riders are looking for. So just a quick project overview, and we'll get into some more details here. What the Innovation Studio is we're going before the board tomorrow, and we'll be asking the board to approve the Innovation Studio. It will allow the Innovation Department with our various user departments to pilot different solutions, new technologies on our system for about a year. How we will come up with what we will be doing is we will put out multiple problem statements that will be released every year. So what we will put out to the community, to the business community, to our riders is say, we have these various challenges that we're trying to deal with, both internally for operations as well as trying to address rider pain points. We'll put those out, and then we will ask for feedback from the business community, from the public, from the private sector. They will have the opportunity to submit proposals to us, and we'll go through an evaluation process that I'll talk about here in a second. We ultimately then will develop a contract with them. We'll go through a pilot and proof of concept that, as I mentioned, will last for about 12 months. And then from there, we'll start to make the decision. Did this work? Should we try to do this at scale at CTA? Or did we try something and it failed, but we probably learned something along the way? Another important point about the Innovation Studio that we'll be asking for board approval is we're asking for a budget of $500,000 annually in order for us to award stipends to private industry. What we have found when we work with private industry and when we've try to do pilots in the past, if you don't try to fund the pilot, what you often get is either teams that are not super committed to the pilot. They're not, companies aren't in the business of doing things for free. We know this. And so you oftentimes don't get the highest resources. You don't get companies that are always willing to work through any challenges that you identify through the pilot. They kind of look for, I want the media bump to say, I'm doing this pilot, but I'm not really committed to actually trying to make this work or trying to solve problems. So we're coming up with a stipend that will not, it's probably not going to fund the entire cost of the pilot, but it will fund a portion to help deal with some of the financial outlays that may come from the companies. But what we also find as well is the companies that are able to do free pilots or proof of concepts are oftentimes very large companies. You oftentimes can't find a small business or especially a DBE, a diverse business enterprise, that can always take on the expense of doing a free pilot. So we also think that stipend will help us in bringing on a diverse set of companies in order to participate in the Innovation Studio. So, I always think it's important to look at what's happening across the country as we come up with our different ideas and our different concepts. And, the Innovation Studio and what we're proposing is unique to CTA. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I tried to steal some learnings from other transit agencies and make sure that we're being smart about this and maybe smarter than how they're operating. So there's two similar concepts of an Innovation Studio that we find at transit authorities across the country. First is Boston. Boston has a proposal where it's sort of an open invitation process where any type of private company can submit a proposal to MBTA, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, and the MBTA staff will review that proposal. What that does happen is it causes businesses to submit what they want to do. It's not necessarily what the agency wants. So sometimes they get a whole lot of proposals for a hammer, for example. MBTA doesn't need a hammer. So then they have to spend a whole bunch of time reviewing a proposal that really isn't needed for their riders or for their operations. So we did like that Boston had a pretty flexible process, and we took some of the learnings that they had from the evaluation process, but we didn't think having an open invitation approach probably made the most sense. And then we looked at what New York has with the Transit Tech Lab. New York has created this public-private initiative with MBTA and what they also call the Partnership for New York. Now, what we're doing similar that we talked about, they put out challenges. So they put out challenge statements so that some of what's getting submitted back is proposals and solutions to deal with challenges that MTA has identified. The limitations that we found with the Transit Tech Lab is in order for a company to submit to a challenge, they have to have agreed to be part of the Transit Tech Lab. So they already have to agreed to have been part of this partnership. They have to have some financial outlays with that and be part of it. And what we also found is the private industry is also trying to drive the challenges that MTA puts out. So we liked the concept of a challenge. We didn't necessarily like the concept that you only had to be part of the Transit Tech Lab in order to submit for a challenge. And we also didn't necessarily like that the private sector was driving some of the decisions around the challenges. We felt like the department and agency leadership, the Citizens Advisory Board, our board, and our riders are best equipped to put out the challenges that we would like to see happen here at CTA. So really quickly on the proposal evaluation and implementation. So the first three darker blue boxes, we will have a three-phased approach of how we will evaluate the proposals. We will put out the challenge statement, the problem statement to the public. We're going to have some educational sessions that we'll talk about here in the next steps. And then eventually we'll get to phase one where we start to review the initial submissions from the companies. We'll review those initial submissions basically for clarity, responsiveness, feasibility. Do the companies just take a proposal that they sent to another agency, send it to us, and it doesn't make sense for what we're asking for? That's really what phase one is. Phase two is where we're really going to do that in-depth evaluation. That's where my team, along with the CTA stakeholders, so, information technology, IT, planning, safety and security, law, we'll all get in a room with what we call the innovators, with those folks that submitted the proposal, and look at what they're proposing, ask questions, they'll do a presentation to us. And so we can really understand what's the company's solution, what are they trying to solve for, and how can we make sure that it makes sense and would work for what the agency wants to do and is responsive to the problem statement. From there, we'll call some sort of perfunctory steps that we need to do from my side, where I look at what my team is proposing and the stakeholder departments are saying, and I will say, yes, that makes great sense. Let's move forward with these pilots. And yes, this stipend amount make sense. What is important, though, is we also will have an external check upon our process. We will also have the chief internal auditor. He and his team will review and confirm that we followed the evaluation process. So the goal is to make sure that we didn't sort of show preferential treatment, that we actually followed all of the evaluation steps that the board has approved in the ordinance, and make sure that everything is above board. This entire phased process, we are going to get that done in about 3 to 4 months. So in a process that typically takes about 12 to 18 months, we're condensing that down into about a 3 to 4 month process. From there, once we get done with that evaluation, we'll move forward with launching the pilot or POC. So we'll work with law to draft the professional services agreement, also referred to as a contract. And then from there, we'll work with the user departments to implement the pilot, to troubleshoot issues, to manage the pilot for up to 12 months. Post-pilot evaluation, after we've run the pilot, the same group that evaluated the pilot, made the selection, will also review the effectiveness of the pilot. So they will take a look at the end of 12 months or however long we say and say, yes, this pilot was successful. It did achieve the KPIs, the key performance indicators that we said we wanted as part of the challenge and the solution that we wanted to be presented. We'll develop a memo to relevant departments, especially the purchasing department, and then from there, we'll make some decisions. Do we want to move forward with a standard RFP, a request for proposal, so that we can do this at scale? Did we learn something in the pilot that all the rest of the departments need to know, but we're not going to move forward with the procurement? Those will be some of the things that we ask. And so what's also important to know is that participation in the pilot or POC, doesn't obligate CTA to purchase or acquire any of the items. That's really important. We're piloting this, we're doing a proof of concept. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we're going to take the learnings and we're going to move on. If it does work, then that's where the decision comes in. Can we do it at scale? Does it make sense for us to try to do at the agency? And what's really beneficial for that is we've done a lot of the problem solving throughout. So as we're developing the request for proposal, we think we can do that faster. We actually think we can then speed up the procurement process on the back end because we have a lot better understanding of what's the technology that we're looking for, how do we want to implement it, what is some of the strategies that we need to be prepared for as we think about doing it at scale. Next steps, and then we're going to get to the really fun part. So the innovation department is going to solicit feedback from the Citizens Advisory Board and the public and our board members and others on the problem statements that you all think would make sense in the Innovation Studio. Our goal is to launch the Innovation Studio in January and start to solicit proposals from there. We've already started working with our diversity procurement and communications team to start to create an outreach plan so that we can get a diverse set of businesses participating. And especially what we heard from our diversity team is they're really excited about this Innovation Studio. We see a lot of times small businesses, DBEs are really interested in participating and working with CTA, but they don't always have a good avenue to get in front of us. They don't always have a way of showing us their ideas, showing us their products. So we think Innovation Studio really opens the doors for them. And I would say it also really opens the doors for companies that maybe aren't traditional transit companies. We have a lot of companies out there that have never worked with transit before, and they're interested in seeing if they can apply their solutions to transit. So this is also a good opportunity for that. Our expectation is to announce the first pilots or proof of concepts in June of next year. And then, as I mentioned, we won't pilot for any longer than 12 months. And the Innovation Studio is going to be sort of an ongoing rolling basis. So essentially, once my team gets the first pilots and proof of concepts off the ground, they're going to start working on the challenge statements for 2025. So they will continue to manage those pilots, but then they'll be working with you all on, okay, what are we doing in 2025? What are those problem statements that we want to put out in January? Okay, now this is where I really hope that we have participation from you all and can get some good ideas from the Citizens Advisory Board. So for the problem statements, we anticipate putting out 3. I have a great team, but trying to do anything beyond 3 is probably going to be a bit of a challenge for them. Probably 3 is going to cause some sleepless nights for them. But we want to have 3 problem statements that are really addressing key challenges facing the agency and its riders. And we also want to be clear, it has to be within the agency's control. We don't want to put out a problem statement that says, we want bus lanes on, for example, bus lanes on every major thoroughfare in the city of Chicago. CTA doesn't have that authority to do that. That requires us to go to the Chicago Department of Transportation. So we really want to make sure that we're putting out a problem statement that is within the agency's control that can be successful in 12 months. We also want to make sure that we're aligning with our customer feedback and what we've seen from them what we've seen from our riders on what they want to see. So we do quarterly rider surveys. We get results regularly from them. And one of the key feedback that we've heard from them is service frequency and reliability, and accuracy and availability of real-time information is a key pain point in the rider journey. And so we really want to think about what is that problem statement that can address the customer experience. And then the last one kind of feeds a little bit into number one is this needs to be actionable to address a specific challenge. We can't put something out that's like infinitely broad, or we can't have problem statements attempting to solve every challenge facing the agency. We really want to think about the studio as how do we address specific pain points, specific challenges that can be measurable, can be acted upon in 12 months, knowing full well that there are a host of other avenues that CTA is pursuing. Innovation Studio is not the only way that we're addressing pain points and investing in our rider experience. It's just one of the many, many tools in our toolbox that we have and that we're trying to implement. And this is just the newest tool that we have that we're looking to launch next year. So with that, I'm going to kind of open it up to the Citizens Advisory Board to get some feedback, answer any questions that you have. But here's sort of the 3 problem statement topics that we'd like to discuss, get some feedback from you all on what you may want to see, what you may be hearing out from riders, so that we can really start to hone in on some problem statements to go live in January that really reflect what you guys see as the major challenges. So with that, Chairperson Arabia, I'll put it out to you. Is there any questions from you or have any feedback?
Well, first I want to thank you guys. This is amazing. Very thoughtful process that you've gone through to
Do this level of research. I'm really excited about it, honestly. I mean, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Regarding the process. So you said that the kind of that process that you go through to select,
Kind of get these applications to the point of being a pilot will be 3 to 4 months.
Yes.
That sounds like a very quick turnaround. Considering that it's the 3 of you on this team.
There's other people on the team that you're not seeing. These are the 2 main faces, but I have other people on the team that are supporting them.
really, and just given the interest that I'm sure will be,
Do you have an idea of how many applications you might receive, or were you able to get that data from Boston or New York on just what the flow of applications is like?
Yeah, so we do see in some of the other, Boston especially because it's a rolling basis, they sort of get proposals. I think they get a couple proposals a week that they're responding to. LA Metro also has something similar and they get a couple proposals a week that they're responding to. LA Metro agrees to respond to all of their proposals within 2 weeks. We are giving ourselves 4 weeks to do that. So we are doubling our time. But you are right. There is a little bit of an unknown, which I think the innovation department, we thrive in sort of the unknown. We love walking into that. No, we love walking into that. So what I would say for us is, we have some flexibility where if we get to your point, if we get a deluge of responses, we then may decide, hey, we've gotten way too many responses for us to try to get this done in a 4-week review cycle before we move to presentation. So we may decide we need to extend that timeline, or what we may say is, hey, we've gotten, for example, a lot of responses on safety and security, but we don't have as many on process improvement and customer experience. Let's take safety and security, move that forward, do some more outreach around the other 2 to make sure that we get some diverse applications and submissions there. So that's one key point. The other key point is we do have criteria that we've laid out in the ordinance that does pretty clearly lay out how companies are going to be graded and how proposals are going to be graded. So the goal is that it will be a process for engaging with them, but we have established a criteria and a rubric, if you will. So we will be able to go through relatively quickly in order to do at least that initial evaluation so that we can weed out any companies that are unresponsive. And then as we move forward to the proposal, we do anticipate making sure that we have very strong proposals there. Again, we have a good rubric in place. But yes, we will be prepared to be flexible if we do get too many applications, or not enough for that matter too, if we don't get enough.
It's our first year, so it's possible, like we'll still, we're gonna try to get the word out as best we can about this new program, but it's also possible we might not reach everybody right away. So yeah, go back to that like flexibility. We'll just have to adjust based on, too much, not enough, and go from there.
Okay. Well,
Tracy Powell.
Yeah, just before we jump off that, I think one of the things that springs to my mind is, I saw where you're sourcing maybe 1871 as potential folks to get things, but also we have other diverse organizations throughout the city, tech hubs outside the Loop area. Just want to make sure that we're going to be reaching out for those kind of folks. I think it's 1921, which is out in out of more diverse developers who work out of Polsky and other places. I just want to make sure that we get the word out to some of these key areas so that we can get input from a very diverse group, particularly that uses CTA, that still may be able to offer this kind of like firsthand experience and be able to be on the development side possibly as well.
Yeah, no, we absolutely will make sure that we reach out to those. And I think that's a good flag for us, is making sure that we do engage, because you are right. There's the great effort that's happening in Roseland. I think that they have one of the largest hydroponic growing that's happening. And, being able to take what may not necessarily be transit, but apply it to transit. So yes, we will actually make sure that we reach out and make sure that you all get the information as well, so that you can spread it within your various groups as well.
Caroline Pavlicek.
Yeah. So a couple questions. I know a couple of people who are individuals that have built a number of tools meant to track like CTA reliability and other metrics. And I was wondering if the proposals are open to individuals as well as companies.
Yeah, they would be open to individuals and companies. We also have not-for-profits. We sort of say globally organizations, because we do know there's groups that maybe aren't necessarily considered companies, but are organizations that work together. So they will be open to that. I think one of the key components of what we will be asking for is the team that's supporting it. And that will be one of the key criteria that we have as part of the Innovation Studio, is making sure that the team is able to support the product and has the resources available. So obviously if an individual supports it, that would be one of our key questions to them. You're one person, you probably have a day job that has nothing to do with this. How are you going to be able to support this project going forward? So I think, so I put that caveat with yes, an individual can support, but we'll ask those type of questions of them.
Okay. And then for submitting ideas of problems to solve, how can CTA writers, or even us, not that we aren't writers, but how can the public submit ideas of problems that they'd like to see solved through the Innovation Studio?
Yeah, so what we're hoping to get from you all today is some initial concepts, some initial ideas. I think you guys probably all agree customer experience is definitely one of the things you'd like to see. Process improvement is very much for our internal customers. We'll be soliciting feedback from our employees of what are ways that we can help them do their job better. And then safety and security kind of crosses both of those. So want to get your feedback on those, start to get some initial ideas. From there, we'll start to work with, how can we do this? Do we put out a survey to the public? Do we do like a social media poll? How do we have that engagement? So we'll have some public engagement from there. But we do want to have sort of a point, if you will, based on guidance from you all.
Yeah, sounds good. I have some ideas. Do you want to hear them after everybody's gotten the chance to ask their questions?
I mean,
I think so. I did have a follow-up question for one of Carolyn's questions, but
I think that would be nice if we let everybody take a stab at it, and then
let's let everybody ask questions, and then you can ask for our feedback.
yeah.
Have you all discussed or identified metrics to, okay, but that process has already been discussed and.
Yeah, so we have some criteria and metrics that we've already established of how we will rate all of the proposals. And then as we develop the problem statements, we will then develop key performance indicator metrics for each problem statement. Because we know, for example, a right-of-way intrusion detection notification is gonna have very different metrics than a digital signage at a bus stop. So we'll have specific metrics that we would set up.
Will we be invited to offer API?
Yeah, so I think as you're submitting proposals to us, if there's things that you say, hey, I would like to see wayfinding improvements because, and you sort of give us that reason, we'll incorporate that into the metrics and KPIs. I think I wouldn't expect most of the general public to be able to give us a lot of metrics and KPIs. I mean, you all are, have some more insight, but what we would really be looking for is the problem statements and why you want those. And then we would help to base the metrics off the why.
Chairperson Raby, and then, did you had a follow-up to Caroline?
I did, yeah. So Caroline was asking about, how if people, regular folks could like also apply to this. So does that mean that the barriers to application, like in terms of like the traditional government procurement process where you need to, be established as MBE, all of those different.
The insurance requirements, all
Yes,
those fun things,
all of
yes.
those things. Will those barriers to entry be reduced so that your normal, regular CTA rider can also participate?
Yes, so the goal is that we would have the professional services agreements, the contracts be reflective of the problem statement. And so yes, we would try to reduce those barriers where it made sense. But for example, I keep picking on the right of way intrusion. If we have a company that literally is going to be working right next to the third rail, there's obviously a lot more questions and insurance and things that need to be in play versus if we have a conversation of you're going to use some of our data to create a tool that does reliability, that looks at reliability, right? So we'll make sure that we have barriers, the barriers of the contract is reflective of the work that you're doing and understanding that yes, some of the barriers to entry with those RFPs, to your point, has been insurance requirements and some of those others. So we are trying to be reflective of that.
Okay.
Aiden Key.
Are there any plans to coordinate with other agencies that are under the RTA umbrella, PACE, Metra? Is this solely for internal CTA or other plans to maybe expand in the future?
Right now, this is just for CTA. We want to see how it goes. We've never done this before. So there's always when you put too many cooks in a kitchen, it gets a little, can get a little haywire. So we're going to try to keep this internal to CTA for the first year. If it's successful, I think it will be successful. We will then look to, yes, have other expansions, potentially talking with CEDA and others about sort of region-wide problem statements or problem statements that would cover more than just CTA.
Ryan McRae.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with some clarifying questions. So the $500,000 y'all are asking for the annual budget is clear, but then you mentioned the $150,000 per pilot. Is that like a reimbursement program or a like stipend on top of the costs?
So it would be a stipend to it will reimburse a portion of the cost. So it's still a stipend though. It won't go at whatever we decide is the stipend. So for example, if a company says we can do something for $25,000, they wouldn't get a stipend for $150,000, right? They would get a stipend for $25,000, but we would cap it at $150,000. So we wouldn't be trying to fund, a $5 million pilot, for example. So that's how it is. So our budget is $500,000 for all the pilots, and then we would have a stipend that would be reimbursement for costs up to $150,000.
Yeah, perfect. Is there a number of pilots y'all are looking to launch every year? And let's say no one's got any good ideas. Are y'all looking?
So we have the 3 problem statements. We anticipate at least 1 pilot for each problem statement. On some of these, we actually would be very interested in having 2 pilots that address the same problem statement so that we could test out different technologies against each other. So I would say at least 3. Likely, I probably don't want to go over like 5 or 6. I would want to stay sort of in that realm, but definitely at least 3. So 1 per the 3 topic areas.
Okay, nice. So this other question's going to be about the scope or power of this innovation. studio. So CTA has surveyed our ridership in the past. We know one of the larger issues that ridership has is reliability and frequency of service. One issue that I've heard a lot of advocacy orgs talk about is a potential bottleneck in the operator classes. So that's a very internal process, hiring the operators. Let's say someone has a solution to that. What ability does the Innovation Studio have to tackle a problem like that?
Yeah, so, I think the Innovation Studio has the ability to tackle true problem statements, true challenges, as you mentioned. Some of those challenges, like hiring, for example, there's some things we can do to improve the process, for sure. I think you see us all the time talking about how do we improve that process, but there's always going to be limitations in the sense of some of it is just sheer people, right? Like, how do you get people in the door? I still can't train people probably faster because we have FTA requirements, right? We have safety requirements, all of those. So where the Innovation Studio is really going to come in is how do we try to improve those processes? Where can we streamline those and show that they're successful and then do them at scale? So, on particular problems, it's going to be, some of them are going to be harder than others for us to address, just given what we're trying to do and the nature of the problem. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't try to tackle it. It just means we understand that what may be the outcome of the pilot the problem is this big, and what the pilot assesses and fixes is a portion of that. And so I think it's just making sure that we go in clear-eyed to the pilot and clear-eyed with the problem statement of not trying to to kind of use the overused phrase, boil the ocean with it. We want to make sure that we have problem statements that will address true problems and understanding if maybe the problem is much bigger than what we're trying to address with the studio, it will at least improve a portion of it and mark that as a success. Or if it wasn't successful, figure out why it wasn't successful and go at it again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Peter Henderson, I'm sorry.
A lot of my questions were answered already, but first, wonderful presentation. Thank you to the three of you. I see this as a plus for CTA, especially bringing in those different companies. They give you insight, and life is all about learning and evolving. So this pilot that you gave to us is beautiful. I see this as a beautiful innovation for the future of transit authority. So again, thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Emmanuel Garcia.
I had the questions for customer experience, but it was answered with and it was in this presentation. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm gonna just note for the record that our Vice Chair, Robert Johnson, has arrived, and welcome.
Hi.
We are in the middle of a presentation on an Innovation Studio Lab pilot concept that is being given to us by our Beaver Innovations, Molly Poppy, along with David All Black. I gave you a whole new name, and
Emily Drexler.
We're going to go back to Caroline because I know Caroline had another portion to her question.
So you can, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Sorry. So I think there's like a few different things. This is more of like a comment, and I'd like to see if anybody else has any similar ideas, just if they'd like to share them, that'd be great. So I think some of the things I was thinking might be good to address would be, I know we talked a lot about the chatbot, and from what I saw, that was pretty widely criticized because it seems the chatbot wouldn't, from what we've been able to see, it wouldn't provide anything more than like what's already on the website. So we think that it might be better to instead have something like a text for safety. I used to live in Minneapolis, and Metro Transit there has a thing where you can text a particular number and you can report things that are like maybe an immediate response, but they're not necessarily a police issue, or like it's something you just need to report more discreetly. So like, for example, if you're on the L and someone's smoking in the car, you could use that to text and they could notify the operator or like station security and get the person to stop smoking, for example. I think that something along those lines would be a great addition to CTA. And then a bunch of mostly bus related reliability things along the lines of what's in Better Streets for Buses. I think tracker reliability is a big thing. I know a lot of people have reported things like ghost buses are still happening. Photo enforcing the bus lanes. I know my work is on Dearborn and there's the bus lane there, and literally every time I go outside the building, there is somebody parked in the bus lane. Something to enforce that so that the buses aren't stuck merging in and out of traffic. Bus bunching and signal priority. Those were kind of my main ideas.
On just the photo enforcement for you really quickly, we actually have a pilot that is
We
moving.
have a pilot.
The city did give us authority to do photo enforcement in the Loop Link area in downtown. We have a process that we're going through right now, and we'll actually have a procurement on the street in early next year for the actual cameras. So this is actually a CTA CDOT partnership that we're doing. So
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I heard about that happening. I
Yes.
didn't know what the timeline was.
yes, yep.
Do we have any other questions? Aiden Keith?
Yeah, so one thing I kind of wanted to, this is sort of an more abstract idea, but so I work part-time in an alderman's office, and when we get complaints from constituents about, you know, maybe a car that's a path that cars are taking that is a residential street, we can work with CDOT, who then contacts Google and Apple or whatever and gets their maps system changed so that they don't have as many instructions to take that route. So I guess one of my frustrations, like I'm a regular rider, I know the system pretty well. I'll put an address that I'm not as familiar with in Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever it is. And I'll look at the instructions and I'm like, this is really just not the most efficient way to get there. And so, you know, for tourists who are coming to the city who have no knowledge of the system, I mean, going from maybe a bus to a bus to a bus is like the worst possible option. And it maybe takes them 2 hours to get there when maybe it's not technically faster. But you take a bus to a train much quicker. And so I wonder if there's a way that, and maybe this is not your department specifically, but have a greater coordination with companies like Google or Apple, or even a small business maybe has a way to better route people. But I just feel like it's really confusing for especially people who aren't familiar with the system. And that kind of goes hand in hand with like real-time trackers. But you know, it's like if you don't know the system, sometimes you're lost as to what you're supposed to do, or it takes you 2 hours longer than it should.
Oh, definitely.
Are there any other questions, comments? Robert Johnson?
Apologize for my tardiness, and this may have already been asked and answered. I was just wondering, when you evaluate the proposed tools or solutions to the problem statement, are you taking into account, or what role, if at all, would a factor such as the tool itself perhaps requiring more of a external resources from CTA itself, right? I think like when she talked about like public safety improvements, we could have like a handy tool. But the tool itself could be very responsive and very useful, but what we have to take into account, well, we need more staffing at stations or along bus routes or something. I'm kind of wondering, where does that come into the calculation?
Yeah, so it comes into calculation in both phase 1 and phase 2. It comes a little bit more in phase 2 where we can ask more questions. Because then that's where the user departments get involved and say, you want to do this, I'm just gonna use your example of text, like I'm safety and security, so how are you gonna communicate the issues that are communicated to us from the riders? And then what's the expectation of how do we respond? So that will come in as part of the phase 2 evaluation. What comes in the phase 1 evaluation by the tool is the companies or organizations have to demonstrate that the tool is available in some way. Like this can't be, I've sketched this on a napkin and I think this is really great. It has to be something that's a little bit more well-defined. So we sort of deal with phase 1 is this a true tool? Does this actually exist? And then phase 2 is where we would have the discussion of CT resources.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I would add just, the beauty of a pilot is that maybe we would be more able to use CTA resources if it's at one or two stations versus trying to deploy something system-wide. And that really provides that test case of like, oh, this turned out to be a really great idea. Maybe we can figure out a way to expand it in the future or something like that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's all of our questions to you all. Really looking forward to chatting out.
Okay, great. Sorry, I just saw something in the chat. Danielle didn't have any questions. I'm sorry. I didn't-
Oh, no worries. Thank you for checking with her.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving us that. I think you guys all know how to reach me. So if you have other ideas, feel free to send them to me. And we'll take a look. Also, if you have companies or organizations that you think we should reach out to, please do share that contact information as well.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that would be actually really helpful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I would also add, just look into London's. I just got back from London yesterday. So, they have a pretty cool like response system in place. So I don't know if you checked them out, but they've got some cool stuff.
That's a good fact. No, London TFL has a
Mhm.
system.
Yeah. Thank you. Our next presentation is entitled Bus Vision, and our presenter is Michael Connolly, CTA's Chief Planning Officer. Good morning,
Morning.
Thanks.
or is it afternoon?
Good to see you. I'm joined this morning by Jennifer Henry, who is the Director of Strategic Planning here at CTA. So she's working on this bus vision project and will continue to work on it. Let's see if I can. Up, yes, it did. I wanted to share with you an update on the recently completed bus vision framing report and give you a preview of next year's activity on this particular initiative. Bus vision is a three-phase initiative to take an unprecedented look at our bus system as a vital part of the mobility landscape here in Chicagoland. The written report, completed in phase one, the framing report, summarizes the existing system pre-pandemic and with the COVID-19 influence that we've been going through in the last 3 years. The next phase, beginning in early 2024, be to roll out phase one framing report and engage in an almost year-long dialogue to examine the choices for system improvements. Phase three, late next year, 2024, will outline what we've heard in phase two during our rigorous public process during the next 12 months, and then propose actions to improve the system. This process will be guided by the written framing report, which brings attention to the choices that need to be made given our available resources. This is a pair of maps from the framing report, and there's a lot more information in there. We'll make this all available to the board here as we roll this out. But just wanted to give you a flavor and a little bit of a sample of what you'll see in the report when it comes out. It indicates the reach of the rail system in the left map and the walking distance to the bus system or a bus stop in the right map. Those are both half-mile walk sheds. So the left map shows the half-mile walk shed to all the rail stations on the system. The right map in that huge grid that completes the city and its 35 suburbs is that half-mile walk distance to our bus grid. It's why we're looking at bus vision. We're actually looking at the bus system here in a way that we haven't really since 1947 when CTA was formed. It demonstrates the full coverage of the bus network. The slide notes that 92% of the Chicago residents are within that walk distance to the bus, but the bus service serves more than just the city of Chicago. We serve the city and 35 suburbs, and 72% of the people in the city and the 35 suburbs have that walk distance access to the bus system as well. The pandemic threw for us into high relief our essential nature of many of the workers who ride transit. That was something that we learned very early on in the pandemic in terms of ridership on our vital bus systems. These workers continue to ride bus service at very high rates. They're not able to work from home. They actually have to go into their jobs. They tend to be lower income and more likely to be Black or brown. They're also lacking in alternative transportation. They're coming from a single car household or a no car household somewhere in the area here. The Bus Vision Framing Report highlights what is good about our system, as well as making some suggestions for what could change. The study concluded that the CTA bus system is very well designed and provides a comprehensive mobility grid across our service area. This effort that we're going through for Bus Vision is really the first wide-ranging study of our bus system that's not aimed at reducing service. There have been studies in the past when there's been a recession, but they've all been aimed at how do we make the system smaller? How do we cut service? That's not what this report is about. That's not what this effort is about. We're looking at how do we improve the system? How do we make it more accessible to more people here in the city? What could we do with increased resources, which you probably already know have been asked for with the part report that's coming out of the region here from the MPO. They're asking for $1.5 billion in additional operating funds that will cover the fiscal cliff and provide places to grow and ways to improve the service. And that's what Bus Vision is setting us up to do. Look at and talk to our riders and our non-riders about what we need to do and what they would like to have us do as we go forward. We want to consider what we could do if those resources were increased. Frequent service is important. It's important to ridership growth, and it's important to the quality of transit. And we've heard from our riders in our customer surveys, it's essential to customer satisfaction with our service. We began this study prior to the pandemic, so this is not pandemic driven. We were looking in 2018 and 2019 at areas where we were losing ridership, and our ridership loss drove us to do an RFP, as Molly said, and it took us a year and a half to sign a contract with somebody. And by the time we signed the contract, it was March of 2020. That's when the pandemic hit. And so we've been a little bit slowed in terms of being able to have the next phase of this, which is to have a whole series of public meetings and to talk to people at large and small meetings throughout the region here. Much of the underlying base information, though, has not changed. 2019 provides a pretty good snapshot of what our transit service was like in the region. And it represents the study, the framing report that we're going to be publishing, studies both before and after the pandemic. The ridership impacts that we've been sharing all along with our dashboards and our reports are a part of the story. However, the pandemic emphasized the importance of the bus to our customers. And it clearly highlighted the population segments with essential jobs who kept riding during that deep pandemic time. The next portions of the study, and this is a couple of maps from the study itself, from the framing report, they go into a little bit about the demographics of the city of Chicago and the equity considerations of public transit in our city and the underlying conditions, which actually mean that our transit can help reduce inequity, but cannot be the only solution to equity here in the city. We need partners and we need actions that are widespread. But I believe that this material about equity and about demographics in the city will help us as we resonate our discussions with the state legislature, with the city council here within the city, and with our advocacy groups and our core riders as we go forward. Persistent segregation and the legacy of redlining here in the city of Chicago have had a deep impact on housing patterns here in Chicago. The left map is a graphic that shows in color the number of jobs available within 2 miles. So green is the area with the most jobs available, over 500,000 jobs available within 2 miles. And the red, dark red areas that you can see in the far south side of the city of Chicago are areas with the least amount of jobs available. And again, this shouldn't be a surprise to you. All of you you live here, you're a part of the community, and you know what Chicago is like. You know what the segregation patterns here have developed over time. And you know that the transit can be and should be a part of the solution and is. And there's something in the report about that as well. The right map is a different look. It displays income differentials in color. The dark blue is for high income, and then the lighter blue, and then the yellow, and then the orange, and then the deep red is for the lowest income areas in the city. And again, not surprising to anybody that knows Chicago. These differences are not just rooted in our communities and rooted in our housing patterns, but continue to impact the way our city lives, the way our city works, and the way our city moves. And that's why it's important to us as a transit agency to look at that and incorporate that in our long-term planning. The location of jobs and racial residency patterns are not within CTA's control, but understanding them is essential to looking at how we shape transit for the future. The right map also indicates that these impacts, both good and bad, extend far beyond the city limits. They out into the areas of Cook County beyond the city border. And again, as I mentioned already, our transit system serves the city of Chicago and 35 Cook County suburbs that surround us. So these are census tract mappings that you see on that. And again, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who knows the city. This next set of maps is again, two maps. The left side one, these are both also from the framing report, but the left one shows access to jobs by transit in a 45-minute commute using bus or rail. So both bus and rail. We're not just talking about bus in this particular set of maps. It clearly illustrates the effect of our rail system. You can see that the dark red that extends out along the blue line and along the green and the blue and the pink and the orange line and the red line as well. It also emphasizes the reasons why CTA is so committed to the red line extension. Because on the far south side, what will that do? It will push that rail access down all the way to Opgolf Gardens down there. The right map is a different map that the consultants put together for us, also from the framing report. But what they're doing there is showing in green areas where access to public transit multiplies the number of jobs reachable within that 45 minutes. And so the 45 minutes is what you get on the left side. On the right side, the green shows areas where the transit access is a multiplier. The darkest green areas make it so that there are 50 times more jobs available because of transit in those areas, particularly down there in Englewood and Chatham as well. It's a measure of how important transit is to access to jobs for people. And it's a clear advantage in that darkest green area down there. It's a result, of course, of where jobs are, which again is something that is a given. It is what it is. We're not going to change that with transit, but it's also where low income and minority residents live. It clearly demonstrates, though, the impact of an effective transit system and how it can and does have a multiplier effect for people who live near transit. Powerful, available public transit does make a difference, but the challenges in the Chicago area are more than the transit system can solve on our own. But we can be, through Bus Vision, a part of the solution. The framing report release, which we come in the next couple of weeks, will kick off a phase 2. The framing report is phase 1. The public process that we're going to go through in the next 12 months is phase 2. It's scheduled for 2024. The intention is to publish the study, kick off a series of public meetings, and discuss with our riders in the city and as the city as a whole, non-riders as well. During 2024, we'll add a dedicated website to this initiative, and we'll conduct a series of surveys of both our riders and non-riders. Our government community relations department and our communications department will be our partners as we go forward with this. But the framing report that is completed doesn't say do this, that. It says these are the choices. These are the questions that you should be asking about your transit service. The answers will come in the next phase as we discuss this with both our riders and non-riders, but also our legislators and our city council members, our county board members, all of whom will be involved in the discussion. We want to hear from people at larger format meetings that we'll have in person. At hybrid meetings, we'll give people access to dialogue online as well. But we're also interested in going out to smaller meetings at a church or with a church group or with a school group and speaking to everybody that we can speak to about public transit, about our bus service, and what do people use it for? And what do they want us to do with it that is possibly different than what we're doing now? These are the questions that you can assist us in answering, and that we want you to be involved as we go forward. We'll use this group as a sounding board as we move forward during the next year, and try to get back to you regularly with participating in your meetings and then getting feedback from you directly. But we'll make sure that you're involved when we have public meetings, so that if you want to drop in and maybe attend a meeting or two that's close to you or convenient for you to be a part of. We're looking forward to your input and to the input from the people of Chicago. Thanks for listening and letting us bring this initiative to you. It's important. It's exciting for us to go forward, because we're looking at bus transit in a different way. We're not looking at bus transit to make it smaller or to make it less or to save money. We're looking at bus transit to make it bigger. What could we do with additional resources? And that's really the question that we're trying to answer. So thanks, and glad to take questions or engage in some dialogue today with you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Connolly. This is awesome. My first question is there a draft available to review? Because I'm very curious.
Yes, we'll get that posted in the next couple of weeks for you. I actually just got a review version yesterday. And so give us 2 or 3 days. We can check and make sure there's nothing weird in there. I think we're done.
Okay.
And we should get it posted, as I say, in the next couple of weeks. We'll make sure to get you guys involved in that when we do the posting here.
Fabulous. A lot of the information you shared sound like it could be a really great opportunity to partner with Molly's team on Innovation Studio. Like there could be some, I don't know what that looks like, but have had that conversation about like the overlaps regarding your work.
We've talked about it, but we haven't really come up with a plan. Those guys have been working on their thing, their initiative for a while. And again, but I think we'll certainly want to involve those guys, and we'll want to involve innovation as we go forward. Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yes, a lot of synergy there.
Yeah, for sure.
Other questions, comments? Peter Henderson?
Great presentation. Thank you to the both. For the bus vision, I know you spoke about the red line extension, which will be at 4 new stations going to 130th. But I wanted to ask about, did you have anything in the report that will be posted out about any new bus service that will be added specifically for the red line extension or anything of that nature?
So there's a reference in the report to the red line extension and the fact that it will change what happens on the far south side. Because all of a sudden you'll have 4 new stations down there south of 95th Street to be able to take what is now, right now, and if you know the service down there, all those buses come into 95th Station. Instead, we'll be able to replace that with a true east-west grid that goes to the new stations at 103rd, 111th, 115th, and 130th down there. So that is a part of, and it's referenced in the document. On the other hand, Bus Vision gives us the opportunity to take that sketch plan that we've done for those stations, but to go down to the area and meet with the folks in Alcott Gardens and say, how can we do this? Here, we could propose putting this bus as an east-west. What does that do? Well, we're going to bring you to the rail line. Is that what you want? Or do you still need a bus that goes north and south and into 95th Street? So it's not, it doesn't tell us what to do with any area, but it opens that up and it says that is an area that will need to be looked at as we're going to make changes. Because we're making changes for the red line extension, we'll need to revise the bus service in that region down there.
Sounds good. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Tracy Powell?
Yeah, I mean, the heat maps that kind of show the different areas is pretty illuminating, although it's like things that we kind of know, but to kind of see it laid out in our eyes where a lot of the opportunities are in the Loop area. And then of course, but one of my concerns as a business owner, and I have 5 locations, I think 3 or 4 of them are going to be on the green line, is how do we eradicate poverty in our city and in the surrounding suburbs is access to opportunities. And one of the biggest things that I have with employees, current and future, is like, where do you live? How far are you from this location? Will you be able to arrive to work on time? And then of course, the number one excuse there's always the bus was late, the train is late, and sometimes that's real and sometimes it's not. But unfortunately, it's always kind of that number one reason why people can't make it to work on time or there's an issue. So really being able to figure out how we make that more transparent, the ability for them to get there and for us, you know, even as potential business owners and people that want to develop outside the loop in the areas, it's just a lot of information that's needed in making decisions on where I want to put my business in Roseland or where I want to put my business in Lawndale. Will people be able to make it here to work, or will even customers be able to get here? So that's good. You're on the right track. Let's hope
On the right track.
we can get some things. Yeah.
And we need that feedback. We need to listen to what the small business people say about that.
Yeah.
So that we can help to, in some ways, to revitalize parts of the city that, can it be done through transportation alone? No.
Yeah.
But transportation, why not? It's important. It's a part.
Thank you.
Caroline Pavlicek.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I think it's really great that we're looking to expand the bus service. I think that, like Tracy mentioned, I think that it's critical for getting people to jobs and giving them opportunities in life. I was wondering if the draft that you're working on includes any sort of plan or details on how we're going to get back to pre-COVID service levels and reliability.
Well, frankly, we're assuming that we will be able to get back to that level. And you know as well, I'm sure you've discussed it before, that the Meeting the Moment plan anticipates and has actually accelerated hiring and training for both bus and rail operators, so that each month as we move forward, we're actually able to hire more and more bus operators and bring back service. So it anticipates that happens and that we will go not only to the 2019 level, but that we will go beyond that 2019 level. So we're assuming that we will make that 2019 level. And then that's what we're looking at with the vision. Where do we go beyond that 2019 level? Because we were concerned, as I mentioned early on when I started the presentation, we were concerned in 2018 and 2019 that we're losing ridership, even with the level of service that we were providing. We were concerned about that enough to begin this bus vision process. We kind of put the whole thing in a little bit of a halt while we dealt with the COVID. And we're looking at now coming out of the COVID. And when we come out of the COVID, do we want to look like we looked at 2019? I think what we're saying is we don't necessarily want to look like we looked in 2019. We want to look different. And how different that difference will be is what we want to talk to people about through bus vision. So I don't know if that answered your question. We're gonna look beyond it. We're not assuming that we're gonna see where we are today with the optimized service levels that are out there. That we're anticipating all of that being added back and then moving beyond that.
So you're thinking like we're going to be moving beyond that service level, but the service is going to look different. How would it be? Like more service that's like between neighborhoods and not necessarily to and from the loop, or?
And I guess I will say to you that the bus vision framing report that we just got written doesn't say you should do this or you should do that. It says, if you want to do this, this is how you would do it. If you want to do this, this is how many resources you'll need to do that. And so should it be more between neighborhoods? Should it be more in the off-peak, in the evenings, or in the midday service? Should it be more in certain neighborhoods rather than other neighborhoods? The report doesn't say that. The report frames the conversation, and the conversation will occur over the next 12 months. At the end of 2024, we'll actually be shaping that up into a report that says, do this, do that. We're going to propose doing this, but we're not at that point.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Danielle Stanley, I know you're joining us remotely and we can't see you in the room, but we don't want to leave you out of the conversation. Do you have any questions or comments? Go on, Ryan McCray.
Yeah, so let me start by saying I love most of y'all's priorities. They sound very in line with what the bus service needs to be focused on. I love that it sounds like we're doing pre-planning for the part consequences, whether it's additional funding. We need to be ready to take that funding and funnel it into more service immediately when we get that. And I'm optimistic that the state will give the huge economic powerhouse of our bus system the money it deserves. But I want to ask, the bus vision did not, well, let me preface this by saying, we brought back up that we're increasing hiring pretty drastically, at least the CTA says it's increasing hiring. But as addressed in the previous hearing we had, the operator numbers have been flat for the last year. So I want to make sure that we're just not accelerating the churn of these employees, that we have a bus vision for employee welfare. I heard one story of a bus operator with CTA that in the first year of operating the bus, there are scheduling instances where they can get off a shift and be scheduled for a new one within 8 hours. I think it's unreasonable to expect that out of employees, especially new ones. You know, I don't blame any employee for leaving after working 8 hours after just getting off. You know, they have to travel home to get 5 to 6 hours of sleep, and then they have to drive a bus again. I mean, as a rider, I don't really want the drivers in that environment. So I would just say, I think that's really the only suggestion I have. Let's have like a bus vision for the bus drivers. They're very important, and I feel like they're not thought about often enough. I'm sorry, I do have one more thing that, yeah, the priorities just, yeah, they seem all amazing. I would hope to not see another version of the Better Streets for Buses plan where it's just ideas. I would want like action items. And I would also say that let's not get the action items that we identify. Let's not bog that down in an overabundance of community engagement. You know, I would say if it wasn't for possibly, you know, maybe I'm getting my history a little mixed up here, but was it 2013 we tried to do BRT on Ashland, and community engagement killed that project. I would think if we listened to the community members advocating for it, then we'd be in a lot better place as a city, I think. That's all I've got to say.
Rob Johnston and Aiden Keith.
Thank you so much for taking the time to present this to us. I had a couple of questions, and I guess maybe a point. When they talked about the 92% coverage serviced by bus, maybe this is nitpicky, but is that kind of line coverage, or is it kind of drawing a kind of a half-mile circle from stops?
I believe it's around stops.
It's around stops?
Fairly sure, partly because our bus stops are generally like 1/8 mile to a quarter.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. That's what I was, okay.
It's like yeah.
Okay. And I don't know, I won't pretend to be an expert here, but if we're talking about reimagining, if something like that, clustering of stops or spacing of stops were to become a discussion, that could change the number, probably marginally, but it could. Is that fair to say? Okay. And in the report, it highlighted that there was low duplication and low waste. My question is duplication seen as waste in the report? Or maybe you know where I might be going with that, or?
Well, so I guess I would say one of the things, and there's nuance to it as well. But you do have duplication, say on Michigan Avenue. All the buses come together.
Yeah.
So that's duplication. Is that bad duplication? It's probably not. Or on the loop link itself, you've got duplication, many routes on the street, because they all come in together. Where the report suggests duplication is bad is where you have duplication that is not necessary. And that's what they didn't find in this. I will say one of the things that drew us to this consulting firm, they had done a study in 2017 for Philadelphia. And one of the things that they found in Philadelphia was there's a lot of duplication that had been going on since the 40s and 50s. And they actually recommended some changes. Now, I will admit, Philadelphia, they wrote their study in 2017. They are just beginning to do the changes now. Philadelphia, that's almost 6 years later. I don't want to wait 6 years, and hopefully we won't have another pandemic. That's what really stalled them in Philadelphia. It stalled us in getting the report written. We're now ready to jump into action and have some of the robust discussion about where we go. But yeah, the duplication it doesn't identify a lot of duplication. It says, there are some places where you have duplication. One of the areas that they looked at was the north and south DuSable Lakeshore Drive runs, where you've got an area that picks up in an area, but the J14 has a different pickup than, or the 136 versus the 146. Those are different on the north side. They're different pickup zones, and then they all jump together onto Lakeshore Drive. And the report didn't say that's bad. It said that's actually probably proper planning as you go forward.
Yeah.
If only we had a bus lane on North Lakeshore Drive.
That's great to hear. I really appreciate that. That's the thoughtfulness. I just wanted to make sure if we're going to we're not erring too far on the side of efficiency, because I actually think, I hear duplication, but I also hear like redundancy. And I think that's a strength, being able to crap, I missed this bus. The next one's not for 10 minutes, but hey, there's alternate route B or 1A to get there, and I can walk a block, or I can just wait at the same stop. And I think that is, obviously that gets harder and harder to do perhaps the further out you go and as density drops. But I think that's part of building a reliable system, that you get repeat riders, right? That it's not all hinging on me getting to this point. Yeah, exactly. And then I was interested, and perhaps this is contrary to my employer role also. But when I saw the jobs map, I also see which is largely is a function of just a density map as well, right? So there's tons and tons of jobs in the loop. I think an interesting nut to crack, and I hope this report is considering, is kind of, the industrial parks and access to those jobs as well, where those are very important jobs and they play like a very important role in the regional economy as well. But because they're not stacked, 30 stories on top of each other, if we just are looking at a map like that, we run the risk of maybe it getting lost in the shuffle. And I don't think you guys are going there, but past life, I know, for example, Bedford Park has always been, a topic of hot discussion, getting people to and from there, places that are often always hiring, right? But transportation is a problem. So I just wanted to put that out there, but keep up the good work in the loop. Keep them coming.
The concern of something getting lost in the shuffle, is it that those other office parks get lost in the shuffle, or that the downtown?
The other office parks, and the kind of like, look at this map and you see where all these jobs are. Let's make sure that everyone in the city can get to all these jobs. And so, no, there's like very important jobs
there,
down here and out here and up there, right?
Got it.
And then just kind of a comment on the phase 2 outreach plans. I get community meetings are very necessary. They're part of a process. I understand firsthand. I also firsthand scarred from community meetings as well. And I don't have the solution. I won't pretend to have the solution, but I'd be interested in learning about, as it develops, what alternative ways of engagement are we doing as well? Because I think it's important. Firsthand burned in 2011 with a PRT. But making sure, we're getting that full spectrum, and maybe there's some interesting and new creative ways to make sure we're getting, all the thoughtfulness we can, and not just, the most motivated voices with the most time on their hands, and the most means to attend somewhere for free without getting paid.
Yeah,
Share their opinion.
I think that can be a really good two-way or multi-way discussion here. I think post-pandemic, things have changed, how engagement, there's new ways to do engagement, pros and cons to all of them, right? And I think maybe our government relations department to be part of that conversation, right? Because we do look to them as well for advice on how to do it. It is difficult to do with limited resources, something that reaches every single person, but you don't always have to reach every single person. You just want to make sure you're getting some representative voices and not leaving somebody important out, right? Like, So maybe it can be a topic for another,
Yeah.
to dive a little bit more
Yeah, no.
into brainstorming about that.
It is something that, and we've talked about it, Jen will be leading this effort as we go forward into 2024. But we've talked about even involving the academic side of the community as well. Not just Northwestern and DePaul and Columbia College, but also the community colleges and Chicago State, which also have a very strong impact on the community itself, and a lot of access to a lot of young people who are thinking about things, thinking about their community, and thinking about where their lives are going to go, where their work lives and their transportation lives are going to be. And the idea would be for us to get in early on and talk to people, young people in the community college classes, and put a table up in the student center and just engage and talk. Hear from people, because to us, that's important. I think that's one of the things that we as a city have to do is incorporate our young people into not only the decision-making, but also into our planning for the future. And that's what this is all about. This is planning for the future. So.
And I think just last thought, sorry,
Yeah, no.
and I imagine cost is probably one of the major drivers here or prohibitions here, but I'd be interested to see, if you have multiple points of contact with an individual, maybe you get a more rounded picture of the role, a bus plays in their life. And the only reason I say that is, I'm a big bus rider. I live right off of several major bus stops. And if you talk to me after a rough experience, I probably have a lot different perspective than if you talk to me on a day where, for example, this morning where everything went off without a hitch, and this is the greatest city in the world with the greatest, and it's kind of like maybe like those multiple touch points, you kind of pull something more useful out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I have just a quick question.
We got Aiden and then some.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, I heard a lot about bus rapid transit, just more specifically. I think it was also community input, but there was also like a lack of political will. The political incentives not always there to have a big infrastructure project that's going to anger active constituents. I mean, I know that was a big issue. And so I guess my concern for this project, maybe of thoughts is, I mean, having something like bus rapid transit on Ashland or Western, I think is a great solution to a lot of these issues. Like, our transit system is very much oriented to the loop. If you have like a really good, solid bus line that takes you down Western, takes you down Ashland, it can move some of those jobs out of the loop and more equitably distributed and, in terms of that issue. But I just wonder, when you have a big infrastructure project like that, do you think it's hard to get, all of these different stakeholders? You need federal money, you need state money, you need city council to approve it. How do you approach issues like that? Is bus rapid transit even feasible? I know this report is probably just making recommendations. And so some things are going to get done, some things are not. But how do you approach that? How do you begin those discussions with people who, can implement it?
So I guess I would characterize the discussion as something that it didn't happen with Ashland in 2013. And it's a tough nut to crack because Ashland was a 16-mile BRT from 95th Street all the way to Irving Park on the north side. And so how many aldermen was that? And yet I'm heartened by the fact that our aldermen today are much more active than they were in 2013. That pleases me. It warms my heart, and it gives me optimism towards being able to accomplish something, because I believe that we can make partners out of those aldermen, or that we can make partners out of the neighborhood coalitions, and that those neighborhood coalitions will go to their aldermen and say, hey, why aren't you in favor of this? And that we'll see the result of that. And so I believe good things can happen because of that. And so we're in a different environment than we were. And again, that's one of the things that we are working on going forward. Better Streets for Buses is a list of 17 corridors that have service, and it's also a toolbox of all these elements. And BRT is one of those elements in the toolbox. how do you put the two together? And that's not what Better Streets for Buses did. What it did was it laid it out. But the next process for us, and Jen is actually the one in charge of this as well, is moving forward with a study that we just got funding for, to look at 3 corridors in that Better Streets for Buses map and pull them out and look at them in detail and figure out how to do something. What's the next level with that? And so that will be occurring. It's not Bus Vision, but it is a part of the vision for bus service is to make those kinds of investments and to do those kinds of changes. So as I say, I'm optimistic because I believe we have a more activist city council than we had in 2013. I think that was one of the holdbacks or one of the stumbling blocks to getting something done was a sort of, I don't care. It doesn't benefit my ward. It's going to make people angry in my ward, but it's a benefit to the entire community. It's a benefit to the entire city. You go down there to 95th and Ashland, and it's a different neighborhood than Irving Park in Ashland. And all of those neighborhoods have to be brought into the fold if we're going to try to move something like BRT on Ashland or Western or Pulaski or whatever the next corridor is.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little less optimistic. I have to pick up the phone and hear people complain about, they're doing these things where you now the bus stops in the street and you have like the bike lane and then you have the curb where people wait, people call about that. So I hope you're right.
Can I, just because I'm not sure everyone's as familiar, I just want to sort of differentiate and explain how how Better Streets for Buses and Bus Vision kind of work together, right? Bus Vision is a pretty broad title and it does, Bus Vision, the technical report, the phase 1 report does talk about street improvements as one part of a possible vision of improving bus service, right? But it is more, I sort of think of it as Better Streets for Buses is a little bit more the capital and Bus Vision is a little more the operations, or another way of thinking of it is Better Streets for Buses was really aimed at having a plan that we shared with CDOT about the infrastructure that they have a lot of control over that we can move forward with. And Bus Vision has a lot of stuff that's not entirely under CTA's control, but mostly, span of service decisions, frequency decisions, routing decisions, things like that. Again, not completely in our control, but more so than taking a lane of traffic, right? So just as they happen to be finished up around the same time, they both faced pandemic delays along the way and other complications, but they're kind of rolling out fairly quickly on the heels of each other. So might be confusing, but I'll try to keep explaining how they're different.
Sonia Del Real.
With regard to the extension of the red line, is there any discussion in the report that's being framed on going east of the Calumet River, even to the border outside of the 35 suburbs that we service? There's just a lot of migration outside of the border or east of the border, and sales tax dollars, all of that is a result of lack of access from my experience. Is there any discussions framed around that?
So one of the items that we're considering as a part of the red line extension bus changes down there would be to extend the bus from Hegewisch over to the Alcal Gardens 130th Street Red Line station, which came about actually with the prior alderman, but Chico, the current Peter Chico is the current alderman down there now, and he's been briefed on that and is aware of it. There's not a specific plan, but it certainly sounds like that's an area that would be ripe for us to reach out and talk to the locals and the community groups that are there, as well as the aldermen, about what the service is in that area. I'm not as familiar with that area as I am with the red line extension footprint, but I know where you're talking about over there, the lettered streets over there and Hegewisch itself along the Calumet corridor over there. But there is, as I say, a plan when the red line extension gets put into place to take that route that stops at Hegewisch now and take it further west and take it all the way over to the red line. So it would actually extend from the southeast side over to the south end of the red line. The extension is made.
Got it. Thank you.
Emmanuel Garcia.
I have no questions, but in general, is there like any routes that go from west to east that are fast?
That have express routes that have limited stops? Not currently.
Yeah.
No, there used to be free service cuts that were the 2008 to 2010 recession. I think we had Irving Park. I don't remember what else.
Madison was also an express route, and I think Garfield was also an express back in the day.
And I would say reinstituting additional X routes, right? That's definitely part of the discussion, right, of bus vision. Is that a good thing to try to bring back?
Peter Henderson?
I said my,
Oh, you said your turn. Sorry, I called on you twice. Are there any other comments or questions?
I have a quick question. Have you all had any conversations with Elevated Chicago? I know that their primary focus is more rapid transit, but they also do a lot around the other, stations, and also with the city's connected communities ordinance and all of that, like just what has the connection been between those?
So we're in Elevated Chicago and we will be. And so we'd imagine we would roll this out to them here after the first of the year and incorporate them into what we're doing. We've been using 10 as a part of our work on things like the Better Streets for Buses and things like looking at the BRT possibilities for 3. So we definitely want to keep them involved. And so I'll make sure we incorporate that in there, and we'll be seeing them probably at the next meeting that they have.
Awesome.
You all are the first external body to hear about this. So we're really pivoting now into the external facing. This report that'll be coming out has just been looking at our data, really.
Fantastic.
Chairperson Raby, there are no further questions.
All right, well, I just was notified, Mike, that this is your last meeting with the CAB, and that you are retiring at the end of the month. So very sad to see you leave, but excited for you to, have a time to chill out and do what you want to do. But thank you so much for your many years of service to CTA and to the city of Chicago, on behalf of the CAB. So,
thank you.
And I personally am very glad that I've gotten a chance to get to know you a little bit in our time of being a part of this. So thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for your words. I am looking forward to retirement. I can ride the bus more.
Quite a lot. He has an average of 2.7 taps per day, including weekends for the last.
Wow.
Just something that was calculated and put on his cake. That's how I know it.
I love that.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So our third presentation was canceled, so we won't be seeing that today. So is there any new business, Ms. Greenlee?
Chairperson Raby, there is no new business.
Okay. Well, then we will move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So first.
All right, Peter. And second?
Second.
It's been properly moved by Peter Henderson and seconded by Tracy Powell that the Citizens Advisory Board meeting be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Sonia Del Real.
Aye.
Peter Henderson.
Aye.
Rob Johnson.
Aye.
Chairperson Raby.
Aye.
Ryan McCray.
Yes.
Caroline Pavlovic. And Tracy Powell.
Yes.
Motion carries. Adjourned.
And Happy New Year and
Happy
holidays and all of that to everyone. Thank you so much.
I would just like to encourage